Everybody, it's Safi and Marco, dish out on the movies. And guess what, everybody? Today we're doing another quote bad movie for bad movie week or month,
I call it Safi's Punishment Month.
which is stupid. But anyway, the movie was called Woodchipper Massacre. And Marco picked this because Chauncey, who directed
Amityville Karen.
and said he did, quote, everything.
He did everything.
We found out was wrong and misleading and not true. This was his, favorite.
Oh, I think it was one of his biggest influences because he talked about the movie all the time. And he would talk about the director, which I could understand why he did, because apparently he used to talk to the director of the movie all the time, and they would talk to each other, and so I think that that's understandable. Like if Safi, if you were to talk to the director of what's a movie you like? What's
The Godfather, I guess.
Well, let's say if you had an interaction with Francis Ford Coppola, on Facebook, like if he messaged you and said, "Hello, Safi, I really enjoyed your review of The Offer. It was very good, although I must disagree with you about a couple of things." You'd be pretty excited about that, wouldn't you?
I think so. But wouldn't know if it was really him or not.
And then he's like, "Safi, will you please buy me, go to Walmart and get some gift cards, some Apple gift cards for $25 each." And then you do that, and then it'd be like, "Oh shit, Francis Ford Coppola scammed you." But oh wait, it wasn't him. It was Gene Takovic from Better Call Saul. So anyways, this movie, it was a huge thing that Chauncey used to talk about all the time, and I had always wondered if it was any good, because he also talked about Peanut Butter Solution, and of course that movie's really, really good, and that movie was definitely worth watching. And I also watched another movie he recommended. It wasn't very good, though. It was a PG-13 movie about these kids who took over their summer camp and took all the counselors hostage. And it was really tame and lame compared to what it could have been, obviously. But this, it was really surprising. So, Safi, tell the audience what you thought.
Well, basically, it was some kids whose father had to go out of town. I guess they didn't have a mom. And he was only going to go out of town for a couple days. So he had this aunt who is disagreeable. I don't know if it was his sister or his mother's or his wife's, wherever she was, her sister.
Talk upwards. Why are you
anyway,
talking to your shirt like you're like...
Because I'm boiling hot.
This movie is...
Okay, anyway, Marco, let's just move on.
Woodchipper Massacre. Get over to the acoustics.
Stop.
Get over to the acoustics area, Safi.
He had a daughter, a young son who was 11, and a teenage boy who looked like he was in his 20s.
Yeah.
And he had this woman come in, this aunt person, to just take what they could. She could watch them while he went out on a date.
No, he went out on a business trip, Safi.
The son.
Oh, yeah. Well, but remember, like, that I guess the date was like, oh... And that's a little plot hole, is that, you'd think that the dad would have told her about that before he invited her.
Yeah, the aunt wouldn't let him go.
Yeah.
And I don't know why she wouldn't let... Oh, because
she's a
weirdo.
Over tight, over the top Christian type of person, like a Christian extremist type of person, like a really old fashioned. And so the movie starts off where it's all about these kids have to suffer at home with this bitch aunt, and oh my god, she was so unlikable, and she was so evil, and she was so just weird and mentally ill, and you can see why her son turned out the way he did too.
Yeah, because
Which
he paid them a visit.
yeah, she has this son named Kim, and he went to jail, and he owes gangsters money and shit. He's pretty bad too, and you can see where he got it from her, and and so basically what happens is they accidentally kill the aunt, and then they throw her body in the wood chipper, and then after that things get even worse because her son comes to see her to shake her down for money.
But then she's not there because they said she's gone, and so he proceeds to shake them down for money.
Yeah, and he physically shakes down the girl because he's like a pedophile too or something. Remember that?
Yeah.
So, ugh. And he was really creepy. I mean, they did a great job. One of the great things about this movie, of the many great things, is that they did a great job casting. They did a great job creating these characters. They have that guy playing Kim, and he just has this really creepy look to him. And he's got like this long hair that like goes all over the place, and he looks kind of like a demented Gene Wilder mixed with like the fat sister from Motel Hell. Like, he looks really creepy. And then of course you have the aunt. She was really well done as a character. All the characters in the movie were very, very good. I hope Safi comes to join the review soon.
Oh, but somebody was going to get into your popcorn that fell on the floor.
Anyways, I'm just going to do the review now.
I'm coming back. I had to pick it up. He was starting to eat it.
So then they have to kill Kim too. They have to kill her son as well. And that...
He was threatening them, and it was actually almost self-defense.
Yeah, it was self-defense. I think the courts would have sided with them on that one.
And the aunt, that was an accident. That was a terrible mistake. He had gotten a special knife in the mail, and it was pretty sharp, and it was big. And she started fighting the little boy over, and he says, "I don't want to give it to you. I got this knife. It's mine."
Yeah, my dad helped me pay for it. He gave me half the money for it.
And so she was trying to take it away from him, and she got stabbed. And she died. So it's with that, they didn't say, "Oh, we don't like her because she's bothering us and trying to run our lives. We're going to kill her." That wasn't it at all. It was a terrible accident. And I don't know what they thought they were going to get away with, but they put the aunt in the wood chipper. But they froze her. I don't know what they did. They cut her up into pieces and they froze all the pieces because the wood chipper doesn't work unless it's meant to have big logs.
Well, no,
of wood.
They thought that was a misconception that they thought. There was this great sequence in Malcolm in the Middle. There's this Malcolm in the Middle episode where they had a wood chipper and they just put like everything they could think of in the wood chipper. Like, they put a basketball in there, they put teddy bears in there, they put all the stuff in there, and it all just shredded into pieces.
Yeah.
And I'll always remember that sequence from the great show Malcolm in the Middle. Went on for 8 seasons and didn't care about overstaying its welcome.
No, and a lot of people seem to remember that show, and they liked it a lot.
So, we won't really give away everything. Of course, we already basically gave away everything. But, who cares, I would say it's worth the watch completely.
They only
I
paid $400 to make it.
and I thought it was a very, very good movie. I would say it's one of the best movies that I've seen all year. And I thought that it had everything that I was expecting from Chauncey's movie. Because this is kind of what his old videos used to be like on YouTube. Like that splashing into shape. And so this is kind of like what I expected from him. But instead, I got it from this guy, John Mcbride. And so I really loved the movie. I thought it was very good. There wasn't really any flaws to me at all.
Well, one flaw for me was they overacted.
Well, I know that, like,
Mainly the girl.
I know, like, the flaws in terms of, like, objective flaws. But, like, subjectively, I don't really have any flaws.
No, they had pretty good music. And it was a well thought out story. Although, how they're going to think they're going to get away with that. Because I don't. They're only renting the wood chipper. It doesn't belong to them. It's some huge machine. It probably, to buy it new, it probably cost several $1,000s. They were only renting it from the hardware store for the weekend, so the boy, the older boy, could put all that wood and crap that's all over the yard. I mean, we have the same kind of thing. We have trees all over the yard, and you go through one winter and there's tree limbs everywhere. They're little pieces, but sometimes there's big pieces, and because of the wind, and they just get old and they just shed.
Instead of having a wood chipper, though, what we do is we have big stick piles where, you know, snakes go in there and they have snake parties together and stuff like that.
Yeah, so we pick up the sticks so you don't want to mow over them. But anyway, they decided, their father wanted them to put all this wood in the wood chipper so that would just grind it all down to nothingness. And that's why they had it in the first place, because he was supposed to, they even ended the movie. The father came home and they had to do the yard. Well, it was mainly the older boy. It was really his responsibility.
Stop explaining.
Well, I guess I can't help it. Okay, well, I thought it was a good movie.
Yeah, there you go.
I just thought it was a well thought out, concise, and it moved along. The movie moved along, and you knew what was going on, and you didn't have to. It didn't depend on you to figure out the story and make up some kind of story idea.
Make up excuses
scenario
for things that they made mistakes with, like in terms of having plot holes. We didn't have to fill in any plot holes because we're not construction people. You know, they fill up the plot holes on the road.
We aren't being paid to write the movie. We're being paid not at all. We are just supposed to watch the movie and enjoy it.
Yeah, it was very enjoyable.
I thought it was.
Everything about it. I mean, the acting was fantastic.
It makes me think that some of these people who write these series that we have seen now and do such a poor job, or
they have tons of money, more than this guy.
This guy did it for $400. I mean, come on. They need to go back. Anyway, these other writers who are not doing their jobs and who are pontificating little criticisms on IMDb and pretending like they're regular people when they're writing the series.
Writing fake reviews.
Yes, they're writing. They need to go back to filmmaking 101, or they need to or go back to story writing.
They need to hire
101.
They need to hire this guy and just have him teach them everything, because as I was saying, the acting was fantastic. It was phenomenal. The acting was so good in a good bad way. In terms of, you know, everyone overacted, but it was so enjoyable regardless. You had you could go through the whole list, like, as I already said, the Gene Wilder guy, the creepy cousin. he did a fantastic job. He was very creepy, and he actually made you feel uncomfortable. And then the aunt, she was very, very good, although she had this wig, and the wig looked so fake.
Yeah.
It looked like it was from a Halloween store, which it probably was. But, still, she did a great job. And then the sister, she was probably the worst one, but she was very entertaining. Like, there was this part in the movie where they have just killed the aunt, and she gets a call, and she goes like, ah! And she starts screaming, and, we were laughing throughout the movie, too, at certain points, and, it was so entertaining in terms of that. And there was a part where she gets a phone call, and it turns out that it's the guy who she has a crush on. And she's like, ooh, he wants me to come and meet him at the movies. And she's talking about all these things, and they have the dead aunt on the floor. And I thought that was hilarious. And so she had some great moments, too. She was just very, very enthusiastic. Like, there were a couple of moments where she, like, screeched when she was talking that maybe they could have done another take with her, since I guess she is like their sister in real life or whatever. They could have done another take or two at certain points with her. And then the younger brother, he was pretty good. I mean, he had a very goofy 80s look, nerdy look. And then, of course, the main brother, the filmmaker himself, he was very good.
That was the filmmaker?
Yeah.
Oh.
And then the dad was good. So everyone in the movie did a great job acting.
Well, Marco said that the father was actually the driver on MASH. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's what it said on IMDb. So, I thought that was cool.
That's very interesting.
And the movie's a very 80s movie. That's another thing that's cool about
it. The fashions are 80s.
It's just so 80s. It makes you feel like you're stepping into an 80s VR simulation, where you into the future now. You're into the future, Safi. You were eating, instead of cream of wheat, you were eating cream of maggots.
That's disgusting, Marco.
Because that's the future. Because of vegans and their mental illnesses. And so you put on goggles so that you can go back to the 80s and dream about Ronald Reagan being your president again.
Gross. I was depressed when he was elected. I was not happy. Him and his Sandinistas. And Noriega and all that. Arms. The things about the arms and
you put on the goggles and you just see the house in this movie, and you hear the music, like the theme for this movie, like, and you're like, oh yeah, this is what I paid for. It came in the mail, and I'm gonna give this a 5-star review on Amazon 5 Plus G1, and it's gonna be a great thing. This movie was an 80s simulation. If you want to feel like you're in the 80s, you watch this movie.
Yeah.
Did it remind you of the 80s, Safi? Oh, shit, Safi.
Really.
You were in the 80s. How could you say that this was not like the 80s?
Well, it was out in the country, and when I was paying attention to the 80s, it was more of an urban thing.
When you were paying attention to the 80s.
Well, we were busy. We went to Tanzania to do field research.
For the whole 80s decade?
Well, we worked on it for the first part, and also in the latter part, I had a baby. And I had gestational diabetes, and it was really hot, and I wanted ice cream, and I couldn't have anything. They put me on because it was a new thing, or I don't know, the treatment was new. You practically had to starve, and they even said, "Have you been dieting?" I'm like, "No, I'm following the diet that you gave me." it was to avoid being on insulin. So I did all kinds of exercise and diet, and that was a big. It was 9 months. It wasn't just about having a baby. It was also about dealing with this
Well,
thing.
you won't have to worry about starving with this movie because it makes you feel very full of how good it is and how complete it is. Pretty much every element of the movie is perfect. There are a couple of songs that in the beginning that were kind of kiddish, as Safi said while we were watching it.
Well, when the dad drove off to the airport, they played this song. You know what it reminded me of? Do you guys remember the Wiggles? It sounded like a Wiggles song.
I watched the Wiggles movie 2 years ago. It was pretty bad.
Well, they had a cash change because one of them had some kind of severe problem. And he actually, a few years ago, when they did some kind of reunion thing, he had a heart attack or something, and they had to give him CPR and do a defibrillator.
Safi, why is this whole video going to be talking about illnesses or some shit?
I just thought you would enjoy the trivia.
What is this? The Office Health Insurance episode?
Was that an 80s thing or was that a 90s? Because that's what you watched.
I watched like a VHS tape or two that I had.
Yeah, it wasn't really an 80s thing, but the music sounded goofy.
They did this whole song where
goofy.
They taught you about bananas and how bananas have potassium and you have to have lots of potassium, and there's like some weird obsession in the early 2000s with having potassium, because then they had that Honey We Shrunk Ourselves movie where the fucking kid, he needs his potassium the entire movie.
Yeah.
And he's got to get the sex cult woman from Smallville to give it to him. So anyways, in terms of other things to talk about in this movie, I would say also, I think that they need to go into this movie knowing that there's not going to be a ton of blood, a ton of violence, a ton of typical like horror movie things. But the thing is that shows how good this movie is, because regardless of that, I really enjoyed it. And I loved almost every minute of it. And, especially the end. The ending was my favorite part, because after all the stuff they've gone through the whole movie, what do they have to worry about at the end, Safi?
The dad coming home, and that's about it.
No, Safi.
I don't know. The yard?
Yeah, the yard.
Well, yeah, they showed him in fast time. All of them, all 3 kids were doing the yard. And
they had to mow the lawn with 2 lawnmowers. They had to pick up stuff. They had to put all the cut up leaves in bags and dispose of that. Like, it was an intense sequence.
It was.
And it felt like, wow, this was so much more intense and graphic than the murders were the whole movie. But it was almost like to me it was like a Hitchcockian type of thing of like, this is what a Hitchcock would do, where, instead of worrying about the murder and worrying about, oh, I have to strangle this person in a certain way where I strangle these 2 specific veins, instead of worrying about that, it's like, oh no, these kids got to clean up the yard before their dad gets home. And like, that was the final conflict of the movie. And I thought that was really good. That was a great idea.
Well, it was a lot to do, and they were afraid that their dad would be upset that they didn't get done. Basically, it was the older boys' responsibility.
Yeah.
But that was a lot of work, no matter what happened. And so the other kids, the other 2 children in the family, they all 3 did everything, and it was a lot, and they got it done. I thought that was neat. And the dad came home, and the kid said, he was saying, boy, you did an excellent job, and I can't believe all the work you did. And he said, well, I can't really take credit for it. I'm going to tell you that the other kids did it too. So it was just a nice, I mean, you had these murders, and it was a very packed, complete little story.
It
And
was fun.
Didn't take much effort.
It didn't take itself too seriously.
Yeah,
it
that
had
was probably the big it factor.
a lot of funny moments too. That like in Amityville Karen, it's just so over the top that it's not funny. It's just cringeworthy. And with this, it's like they were taking it seriously a little bit, but they were so much more mature in terms of how they made this movie. And the ending really reminded me of Adventures in Babysitting, where they get home at the end of the movie, and then they have to clean up the macaroni.
And the parents are on the way home. They're in the car on the freeway.
It was the same type of thing to me, and so I thought that was really good. And it was also surprising that this was based off of the same murder that Fargo was based off of, the Fargo movie. And I would say, Safi, this movie's better than Fargo.
I don't know about that. It was more complex, and they showed different things. This could lead up to Fargo. I mean, it was just like...
It could be a companion movie.
It could be a companion movie. You kind of see a more kids version, but still, there were 2 murders. And then you see Fargo, which did a few little adult things that made it more adult.
I just felt like Fargo was a cold movie, and this movie was a lot more warmer in terms of like just how much fun it was. It really felt like a home movie, to where like anyone could have made this movie back then. And that's one of the things that I like about smaller movies, is that you kind of get to see different people's perspectives around the world, and you get to see like they have their own little place, their own little towns, and their own little environments where they use to make into a movie. And so that's what this was like for me. Like it was like a different perspective than usual, and it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, but it was good, and I would recommend it.
Yeah.
I gave it a B+.
Safi, you have to rate it in terms of food.
Oh, that's right. It's a movie.
Amateur.
Well,
You're speaking into your chest again.
I'm tired, okay? And I'm hot. All right. And I've got some things to do before I go to bed, and I need to do them. Okay.
I'm so hot.
I would say, I think I'll give it a chicken pot pie, a real good one. I thought about I might make it tomorrow. I have to come up with something for dinner. And
if you make it good, then I'd be okay.
Okay, I'll make it bad. Yeah, it's silly. But it just has, it has a crust on top, a biscuit crust. This is my pot pie. But then underneath, they had all this good gravy with vegetables and chicken and potatoes, a few little potatoes. And it's very tasty. And you put it all together, and get it out of the oven. It's steaming hot. And it's just really good. And I just think you have this layer, and then underneath you have all this really good stuff. And that's kind of like what the movie was. So what about you, Marco? What did you grade it in terms of food?
Immediately after watching the movie, the first thing that came to mind was chili. And I thought that it would actually be the perfect food to eat while watching the movie too, because the movie is very cold in terms of it does take place during the fall, and so everyone you can see their breaths sometimes. You can feel like they're all cold when they go outside, and so the movie just had the feeling of like when you go inside from the cold in the fall and you have a nice hot bowl of chili. And it's very comforting and warm, and it's got a lot of spice, and it's got a lot of different elements, and it's very hearty, and it fills you up. And this movie fills you up. It's not like those indie movies where you watch it and you're like, oh, I want, I want everything that they didn't give me, like in Amityville Karen, where they didn't give you anything.
Yeah.
Like in that movie, I was like, oh wow, I felt like I just completely wasted my time. But with this, I was like, this was really worth it to watch. I was considering picking another movie, and I'm glad that I didn't. So, well, what was your favorite scene, Safi? That'll be your last thing since I've been doing a lot of the reviewing for this movie.
Yeah, right. Huh. Oh, well, I guess the kids cleaning up the yard because they did it fast paced filming. And, oh, that's the scene that really,
In the dinner scene where
yeah,
the
I
aunt,
don't know what she made.
it was so
Gross.
gross looking. It was probably one of the grossest things I've ever seen. It looked kind of like gross enchiladas,
I don't
maybe.
know. I thought it looked like scalloped potatoes
Ugh.
mixed with other things in there, like it
Ugh.
got burned.
Ugh.
Ugh.
Ugh. Ugh, that was so gross looking. So yeah, this movie was very creative, and we would both highly recommend it.
Yep. So if you like this video, give it a thumbs up and be sure to become one of our subscribers.
And sure to come over subscribers.
We welcome you to becoming a subscriber and we welcome your comments and look for this movie.
Become a subscriber.
You might enjoy it, and it's not going to be some fantastic movie with lots of effects.
It is a fantastic movie. It's very fantastic.
It's not loud, and it's very understated.
Well, Safi, they have $400. What'd you expect?
That's right. Well, it's understated, but it's a good thing because it's quality versus quantity.
Yeah.
So that's a good thing. So anyway, goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.